Hey friends, Seeking Our Spirit is back. This is Brett, and I got another great episode for you this week. I got to sit down and speak with a new friend of mine, Janelle Moffett. Got to speak about her journey in the battle with cancer and other aspects of her life, her spiritual journey. So I enjoyed it. Hope you all enjoy as well. As always, if you'd like to be on the show, please contact me at seekingourspirit@gmail.com. That's also where you can contact me to inquire about spiritual direction. And go over to the YouTube channel and hit subscribe and follow there, even if you don't watch over there. Keep hitting those like buttons and share buttons and all the support. Really, really appreciate it. Also, if you would like to be on the show, but you don't want to do an interview, you just want to share a story that I can discuss with someone and feature, you can call me at 615-933-9737 and simply leave a message. So hope to hear from you folks, hope to continue to do this, and hope that you enjoy this episode. Y'all take care. So once again, good morning and welcome. Janelle Moffett. As I was saying before we hit record, I'm excited to have you and very thankful that you're willing to come forward and go on this journey with me without knowing me at all. So I really appreciate that and looking forward to diving in with you. I guess, as always, just to start, why don't you just tell folks who you are, a little bit about your background and what you do, and then we'll
Sure.
go.
Okay. I am Janelle Moffett from Springfield, Missouri, and I actually live in a really small town outside of Springfield called Marshfield, but it's a really small town. I'm a mom of my two grown kids. I have a daughter and a son who is married. So 2 kids and a +1, all of whom I love dearly. Family is my whole life. I have 2 sisters that, we're very close and live nearby. And the one that doesn't live nearby, we talk every day. As far as career-wise, I lead and develop teams of salespeople and other leaders, work on talent-based coaching, business development, and that's just a little bit about me.
Yeah, great. And you're from Springfield always, or?
Yeah, well, actually, this small town, Marshfield, that I live in, that is where I went to school my whole life. I actually, lived in an even smaller town just outside of here, when I was born and for the first, 5 years of my life, which we'll talk about later.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, lived here my whole life. I left for a short time and went to KU for 1 semester, and that was not the place for me. Turns out I actually do like small towns, even though all through school I thought I can't wait to get out of here. I'm never coming back, and so I did get out of here and couldn't get back fast enough.
Yeah.
I came back and finished college here.
That's great. Well, awesome. Well, thank you. And so I guess just to dive in, I keep phrasing this question differently all the time, but my whole sort of goal or desire is to just explore, what do we mean when we say spirituality? And so I've found that a way I like to explore that is sort of through people's stories and through the lens of folks' experience in life. So when Janelle thinks of spirituality, where do you even become sort of conscious of that idea? Is that something you were raised with? Does that come through institutional organized religion? Does that, did you have a sense of a internal or experiential, relationship with spirituality? Where do you enter into that?
Well, as a young child, living in this really small town of a few hundred people, we, went to a Baptist church, and I have early memories of going to this church with my family, my grandpa, going, home from church and having Sunday dinner with, everyone at the house. all the Easter egg hunts and just the stuff that you do at church.
Yeah.
So I think that is maybe where I started. It was the gatherings and the people that I think was my first, I guess learning that there was something greater than me.
Yeah.
And I always loved being in those family gatherings and just the fellowship and, the prayers before meals and leaning on each other and finding that strength within our group. But then there were some pivotal points in my life, where I was very close to my grandfather as a very young child. I was very close. And when he passed away, I just remember I was 5, and I just remember crying and crying and praying the best way that I knew how at that time. And that gave me such comfort and peace in doing that. But I guess it wasn't until I got older and you go through things in life that bring you back to the thing that you've always found that peace and comfort in. So, it was later in life and I went through, parents that divorced and a step parent that was not a good parent and, broken marriage of my own. But when my son was born, that is when I really started to, rely on and develop a relationship with God.
Yeah.
And, again, it's the point where I had struggles in life that I realized that my spirituality is what I lean on for everything.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's a theme, right? Well, I think I see this in a lot of folks' stories and in my story as well. And it's something we talk about quite often of like, sometimes it's this, well, theologically, we call it the problem of suffering, right? There's this realization that suffering exists somehow, even though we don't want to say, I'm not even really comfortable saying that God might use suffering, right, to bring us closer. I don't want to say that. And yet,
right.
So many times in our lives, the experiences when we have suffering, we tend to react and get closer to God, right? And it's it's sort of a hard thing to wrap your head around. And I would never want to say that God is this being that causes suffering intentionally.
Right.
But
right.
you recognize, like, when life really and everything hits the fan, we tend to hit our knees, and it does bring us. Maybe it's just the humility that suffering sort of brings in us. But
yeah, and I think also the sense of, at least for me, a point after my son was born, and we were young parents, and we were, just struggling to get by financially, and he was maybe 3 months old, and I remember trying to figure out, how was I going to pay this bill? How was I going to buy, these diapers and the formula, and went to take money out of savings. I needed to get a loan. And I was doing this running around, just trying to figure out how to make ends meet one day. And he was crying and he was hungry, and I just wasn't taking the time to really take care of him and comfort him. And I sat in a parking lot and I held him and just prayed and thought, and it's the point where you have these like lows in your life, in my life anyway, where I try to bargain with God.
Yeah.
And I'm like, look, Lord, you give me the tools, give me the wisdom. I will do the work, but you guide me and like help me get through this. And I promise I'll never do this again, or I'll never do that again.
Mhm.
And so that was definitely a pivotal point for me when I was holding my brand new baby and I was having these struggles and he was crying. And I thought, look, I'm not being the best version of me. And I need God to help me through this because
Mhm.
I have just been given the most important responsibility of my lifetime. And I have to do it right. And so that was a pivotal point for me as well.
Yeah.
Just a couple of years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And that was a point where it was completely out of my control. I was in a place where I had to rely on my spirituality and the peace, the hope, the comfort, the security, just the compass that my spirituality and that I know God will provide for me, I had to rely on that to
Mhm.
get through. And every step, every challenge, everything I've had has brought me closer to God. And I think, wow, I thought I had a relation with Him before, but now I realize I really didn't because I'm closer and it has more depth and more meaning now than it did each of those times before.
Yeah. And yeah, that's beautiful. And I mean, I'm just repeating myself, but yet again, it's like I don't know what to do with that, with like the closeness coming out of the suffering, but it's beautiful. What so man, there's a lot of places I want to dig in there, but like something you said earlier too was about the community. You pointed out community and how important that was in sort of your childhood and in the church, I guess. Is that a theme that you see carry throughout your life? I mean, would you say, I talk a lot on this show about like I call them the languages that God uses to talk with us,
Mhm.
and we all sort of have different ones, and community certainly is one of them, I think. And would you say that you've, I guess, witnessed God or the relationship that you have with God through community, or would that be going too far?
No, I think so. I feel I'm a very private person, and so I don't tend to share a lot with friends, family, However, when I'm in this community of other believers, um, or I shouldn't even say that. I guess it's everyone. And when I have the chance to tell my story and to talk about what has led me to where I am today, I do feel that closeness.
Hmm.
Um, I would say, like in some ways at church, yes, I feel that closeness, but it's not necessarily at church. I don't have the relationships with, the congregation, people at church that I have outside of that.
Uh-huh.
And there are moments during church or during an organized event where I start to feel a little bit of closeness, but I tend to internalize that rather than go to the altar and to do all of those things. I internalize it and I do it on
Yeah.
my own.
Yeah. Yeah, but it sounds like you've got, even outside of the church, but these whatever the significant relationships that you have where you go and are vulnerable and authentic.
Mhm.
It sounds like those were um, have been powerful for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's also times where I don't know, like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what's going on. I don't know how I feel.
Mhm.
And so I journal a lot. I have a prayer journal. And that's where it helps me put my feelings, what I want to pray for, what I need to pray for. It helps me organize those thoughts on paper so that I'm better equipped to have the conversations with my loved ones or
Mm.
whoever. It's hard to talk about that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Do you treat the journaling as prayer, or is that how do you?
Uh, Yeah, that's a part of what I do. I go through this process of, what am I thankful for? What do I need help? How do I need the Lord to guide me in
Mm,
decisions? What's heavy on my heart? And then I take that into, like, the prayer portion. And so I journal and then I pray at the conclusion.
interesting.
Um,
Did someone teach you that, or is that just something that was?
No, I actually just started that a couple of years ago when when my cancer journey started. Um, that is a journey that it's undescribable in a lot of ways, on the roller coaster of emotions, the fear, um, just all the different things that go into it.
Yeah.
And that was the only way I could figure out how to channel this, the energy and the pain and the worry. That I wasn't worried about dying. For me, I was worried about leaving my kids without a mom. And so I had to find a way to put that all on paper, because I didn't want to talk about all of these fears with my kids. I didn't want them to worry. I didn't want to talk about all of these fears with my mom or my family, because I mean, they're the closest people to me and the ones that I normally would talk to things about, but I was trying to protect them and I
Yeah.
didn't want them to worry. So that was the way for me to kind of channel that and organize my thoughts in a way to pray.
Yeah. Wow. That's such an intense experience. I mean, it's interesting. The only reason I asked if someone taught you that is it reminded. Have you ever heard of Ignatian spirituality, Saint Ignatius?
Uh-uh.
So, well, long story short, there's ancient sort of contemplative practices,
Mhm.
prayer disciplines, I guess, that come from Saint Ignatius sort of school of thought, and it's not necessarily journaling, but the process that you just described is it's called the daily examine, and so it's either at the
Okay.
beginning of the day or at the end of the day. It's going through, um, yeah, what you're thankful for, what could have been better, and asking God to sort of guide you in the day to come. So it's just interesting that you naturally kind of fell into this like nice Ignatian pattern. So
Oh, that's funny.
yeah. So it, I mean, I guess I'm just curious. I know it's such an intense. I don't even know where to start in terms of like cancer journey and
Mhm.
spirituality. But it's what came through to me as you're describing several aspects of your life so far. It, you had a foundation. It sounds like,
Yes.
um, uh, a foundation of a relationship or a sense of spirituality that you relied on, in
Mhm.
great part, throughout that journey. So I guess I'm sort of, but even before we sort of dig in there, like, what do you attribute that to? Where did that foundation come from?
Oh, from my mom, from my grandma, my grandpa, my dad. That was just how we were raised. Um, and
Like in terms of like relationship with God?
well, no, as far as going to church, the Christianity,
Okay.
and I saw the relationship, or I should say, felt the relationship that my grandparents had with God, and so I saw that, and I know that in times where I would talk to them, or they would try to teach me things. So I would say that's probably where I saw it beginning, and I just naturally started to develop it based
Hmm.
on their experiences that they would share, and them teaching me how to work through situations, and to show gratitude for things in life too.
Hmm. That's great. So sort of a modeling almost
Mhm.
of a spiritual relationship. And then,
Yeah, it definitely was modeling, and then it began to, as I got older, it turned into my own relationship and
yeah,
experience.
And I know I'm teasing out like backstory here, but like, do you have any of those sort of, as a child or adolescent, teenager, young adult, do you have any sort of touchstones that you would name or point out um, that were important in terms of your spiritual growth?
Um,
It's I guess I mean it's funny,
yeah.
and the reason I like to ask it of people is like some people just seem to have that sense of spirituality always, and they don't even know where it came from. And then some people sort of seem to have almost like these in-breaking moments, where it's like God hitting them over the head or something. And so it's curious always to me.
No, I think that it was just kind of always there. I don't remember as a young child or young adult any aha moments where, I just discovered this. Yeah, I feel like it was always there.
Hmm.
But probably the biggest moment for me where it was, like I was saying earlier, what I thought I had a relationship with God until cancer hit. That was in August of 21. But that is when it really started. My, spirituality and relationship with God really started to
Yeah.
take on a strong hold.
Man, okay. Well, let's dive in there a little bit. I mean, I just don't even know what to ask you. Like and it feels to me like even in just having this conversation with you, which that sort of puts a fine point on, I think. Um, I'm honored to have this conversation with you because I feel like you just said 21, right? Like I'm
Mhm.
sitting here going, how have you even been able to process right up to this point? That's
Mhm.
not a long time, So
Right.
um, yeah, so I guess yeah, just tell me more about that. I mean, so what I'm hearing you say is, yeah, you think you have a life figured out, or you think you have,
Mhm.
a grasp on reality, and then yeah, you think you understand your relationship with God, and then cancer or disaster or tragedy, and that completely reshapes. So, I mean, yeah, what
Yeah.
would you say about that? What was that experience like, and what did that do to that relationship?
Uh, well, I would say right out of the gate, I actually learned about my cancer diagnosis from an email while I was sitting at my desk at the office.
Oh my
And
gosh.
my daughter, who is special needs, she was at work with me that day, and she was sitting over at a side table. And I'm reading the email, and she's like, "Hey, mom, look at this! The picture I drew you. We were just at the beach." And I'm reading the email that says, I have a malignant tumor. And I just started shaking. Like I left. I said, "Honey, I'll be back. I got to go to the bathroom." And I fell to my knees.
Ugh.
And that's all in that moment. That's all I knew to do
Mhm.
was pray. And in that moment, all I thought about were my kids and what were they, how was this new journey that we were about to embark on, how were they going to be affected by it? I knew that no matter the outcome, I was going to be okay. No matter the outcome, I was going to be a winner of
Mm.
this journey. And I was worried about my kids. And so I went immediately, to a few doctor appointments over a couple of weeks in Springfield. And I didn't feel settled in the conversations that I was having, the treatment plan. It just didn't feel right because it seemed like their solution, their plan was just too quick, too easy. And although I hoped that that was the plan, there's just something in you. Sometimes you have a gut and you're like, I need to check this out a little bit more. And so I came home and I just prayed and prayed and I researched. I thought, okay, I have great insurance, and so let's use this. Let's figure out where I can go. And that's where I came across my MD Anderson in Houston, Texas. And I thought, okay, I'm going to fill out this application. You have to be accepted into their program. So I fill out all the information. And then it hit me. I'm like, how I live in Springfield. My job is here. My kids are here. My daughter needs me. I've got 2 dogs. How am I going to pay for it? I didn't know. And so it was in that moment, it was around 11 o'clock at night, sitting in bed with my laptop. I just shut the laptop and I prayed. And I said, Lord, I'm giving this to you. This is the one. I'm a very controlled person. I have everything in life planned out. I'm very organized. I can't control this. I can't plan this out. I can't do this. Lord, this is between you and the doctors. I'm here. I'm yours. And so that was the moment where it really, I turned everything over to God. And through that whole process, I thank God every day that there was whatever you want to call it, whether it was my own intuition, my gut, or the Lord speaking to me saying, you need to check this out. There's more here for you. I thank God every day for that, because when I got to Houston, it wasn't 1 tumor, it was 5.
Whoa.
And it had multiplied. It was from the time that I had my scans here in Springfield to the time that I had the surgery and had everything removed.
Wow.
So it turned out to be a much bigger deal than they initially thought. Mm. And in the time that I was down there in MD Anderson, there were some very sick people, very, very sick people that made me think, wow, I've got this easy, and it just put so much in perspective for me, for life, for what's important, for levels of tolerance or intolerance that I have for things. It really that was a pivotal turning point for me.
Yeah. Man, boy, so that theme comes back a little bit, right? Of whether it's our suffering or we're witnessing suffering in the world, that effect that has on us. You reminded me, I know it's not the same thing, but I see this all the time when we take mission teams to Bolivia. And if someone's never been in a third world country or seen that stuff, it changes their lives. And yeah, the gratitude, the realization of how much we have and how much we have to be thankful for every single moment of every day, and how we just take all of that for granted. And that is right. I think that ties so strongly. I don't know, maybe people that are listening to this, would be like, that what does that have to do with spirituality? And that's just, we should be grateful. But I think that gratitude is actually a huge part of that relationship that we have with God. And it's something that in the Western world and in our just ridiculously blessed society that we live in, we can often lose sight of it.
Right.
I say this way too much, but Meister Eckhart said, if the only prayer you ever say is thank you, that is enough. And yeah, so that posture of gratitude, which is also, I think, a posture of humility, I don't know, opens us, I would maybe say. It's as if when we're not grateful and we run around and we just sort of take everything for granted, I think also we end up thinking that all of this stuff came from our efforts, right? And came from us, so it's funny how those two things sort of go hand in hand.
Right.
But I also wanted to point out, you just, I guess I'm always desirous of being sensitive of how to say this, but because I recognize not everyone in the world or everyone that would listen to this show has the experience of parenthood.
Mhm.
But that it was just so beautiful the way you put that, and genuine in that moment, not being afraid for you, but it was all about your children.
Mhm.
And that level, I guess in some ways it's, you could tie it to what we just said about gratitude, but that level of love for other, right? And it comes
Right.
most naturally in our children, so much so that we can lessen ourselves, we can give over ourselves because of that love. I mean,
Yeah.
that's um, yeah, that deeply spiritual in and of itself. I always say I never understood. Um, I came from a great family and a lot of love, but I never really could even fathom that. I realized until I had my own kids, and then I was like, oh wow,
Yeah. Yeah.
this is how much I'm loved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. It having kids, being a parent changes everything. It's the most rewarding experience ever, but it's also torture.
Oh gosh,
It's torture on our hearts, isn't
every day.
it?
Yeah. Especially you get to teenagers, it's like we're like,
Yeah.
oh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, well, I know I just said a whole bunch, so I don't even. Do you have a reaction to that at all? I mean, what's
I mean, just, the when you're in a or when you're facing life and death decisions that you have to make, for me, the spirituality and my relationship with God is what guided every decision and what gave me comfort in every decision. And, um, praying about those decisions. And again, I was fighting and staying strong and doing the things that I needed to do to get through on the days that I felt my worst and wasn't sure what was going to be next. I just kept thinking that, I'm in this place because the experience is going to give me more. It's going to give me more to talk about. It's going to give me a platform to share about spirituality
that's
and
interesting.
it.
Sorry.
Yeah, I just think that I firmly believe that there is good in all things.
Yeah.
And I try to think about all of the experiences and I go back to all these bad experiences. I haven't had just a horrible life, but I go back to these bad experiences and think, what can I take from that? What can I learn from that? How can I share this message to help other people? And I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to me, and don't let me put words in your mouth here, but it almost
Yeah.
sounded like you were saying, um, in this, in the midst of this cancer battle, were you already having that conversation and realization, like you just said, that like this will be used, how
Yes.
can I share this story? That's really
Yes.
interesting. Um
I started, so I initially, when this journey started, I had a lot of people in my immediate family, in my local community, and across the country, because I'm connected with a lot of people in the work that I do, wanting updates. How are you doing? What's going on? And so I started a private Facebook group as a way to invite these people and I could just post updates because it's exhausting to retell the story over and over and
oh
answer
yeah.
questions over and over. And I really appreciated and it made me feel good, the love that I was getting from people asking how I was doing, but it became too much. So I started the group where I could just post updates. And as I started writing, I thought, this update alone doesn't fully tell the story about how I'm feeling. If I were just to write an update about this is the surgery, this is what they're
Right.
going to do, this is the treatment I'm going to have. That in itself makes it sound like I maybe am not doing good, or I'm not in the right headspace, or that I'm lonely or scared, or whatever it might be. And so it began to evolve into where I'm like, no, I need to tell my whole story about how I'm feeling today. How did I get to this place where, I'm putting my faith in God to walk me through this? And so that's how the page eventually evolved into being more than just an update. And it was my true feelings and what I was relying on to get me through. And I think for some people became a point of inspiration. And so that became a platform for me to tell the story and, hopefully bring other people to their spiritual place as well.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. Guess I've never really thought about that too much before. But it just seemed very, um, it seemed like it's an important decision, right? And it's interesting because both that sharing is then, as you're saying, feeding, supporting, inspiring other people, but then I'm sure that's also, um, building strength for you, right? And it's
Mhm.
allowing you to process, and it's allowing you to express. You're taking that journaling, that you mentioned before,
Yes.
um,
Yes.
over there. Yeah. Um, what about, um, I mean, so this is everything so far that you've said, and I don't have the right words for this, so I hope this isn't like, where was there anger? Was there, were there negative? You know what I mean? Like this, I'm impressed. I guess is what I'm saying, is like you're in this story so far. There's a lot of strength being shown,
Right.
and that's beautiful. So I'm not trying to, you know
No,
doubt that in
no,
any way, but I'm wondering, like, yeah, like what were the low times like? Um,
well, so I never did I have any anger about me being in that place where I was at.
wow.
And I had at the place where I was staying in Houston, one of the volunteers, there, like I said, there was a lot of sick people there. And one of the volunteers asked me, do you ever question why me? Why was I chosen for this? And I instantly thought, no, why not me?
Mm,
I am no better or no less deserving of going through this than anyone else.
mm,
And perhaps I was chosen for this because I have the ability to take and do more than maybe the next person would. There's
yeah.
just that truly never, no anger, and truly never crossed my mind, why me?
Wow.
And
Yeah, your answer might be right, because that I'd say that's pretty, I mean, that's
I,
cool,
I just, um, it never, and it's I believe my spirituality and the strength that I get from my relationship with God in knowing that I will get through this somehow. I don't know what the end, and I'm in a very, very good place today, and I'm finishing up I'm still on some oral chemo now,
Mm,
and I'm in a very great place, but somehow I'm going to get through this. And it has put a laser focus on me making sure that all of my affairs in order. I don't think that this journey is coming to an end for me anytime soon. I really don't. However, it emphasizes the importance that I need to have all my affairs in order. I need to make sure I've done the very best job at raising my kids so that they can be independent and take care of themselves and be emotionally ready to deal with what will happen someday.
mm,
And I just like the Lord has been my compass through all of this. And in the end, no matter what, like I said before, I will be okay. I know what the end looks like for me.
mm,
I'm trying to make sure that whatever happens, whenever it happens, I've done everything I can to set my family up, my kids up, and those around me to know what it's like.
Yeah, man. So for me, well, and I should have said too before. I mean, congratulations, just in where you are in this process, in this battle, and I'm happy for you, and
Thank you.
obviously continued prayers and any support that can be offered for the journey ahead. But you know, so these two things are just coming so strong for me in terms of your story, and it just keeps coming back. But it's that, again, this dynamic of the somehow the beauty and the power that can come out of something that is suffering or that is negative, that comes so strong in you. And I guess as I'm thinking this, I'm going, well, yeah, duh, right? Like, as Christians, this is part of the story, right? That is death and resurrection, right? It's we go into whatever it might be. It doesn't have to be an illness, right? But we go into the darkness of life and the suffering of life, and somehow are made new out of that. Somehow find the inspiration or the power or the energy or the whatever to and I keep also seeing somehow that operates in our life to then make all the good things so sweet,
so much better,
so much more valued, right? Because when everything's just chugging along and everything's good, and we get obsessed with all this crap that doesn't matter, and then we see all the time, families where it would seem as if parents and children don't even really have a relationship, right? I mean, they're just cohabitants in a home, but when we have experiences like this, it's like every moment is precious. Yeah. And I know I'm repeating myself from the beginning of what we talked about, but it's like, I see everything I just said, and I also don't want to admit that because I don't want it to be like, oh, I need pain or suffering or,
right.
So anyway, I guess I'm just naming like that. I'm just seeing that so clearly in your story.
We do get in the motion of, it's like we get on autopilot, going through the day, doing all the parent things and going to, to school drop-offs, practices, work, taking care of the house, all, the errands. We just get in the motion. And sometimes it's, we just forget that, I haven't been thankful for anything today, or I haven't asked God for help with these struggles that I'm having. And sometimes, we wait until it gets really bad, and then we're like, oh, maybe I should talk about this, God. And and then there, I have moments where I go through these spells of everything's great, everything's good, and I'm not giving thanks like I should. And then I'll wake up one morning and I'm like, that's a beautiful sunset. Mm-hmm. And you just have this sense of like the spirituality, like really kicking in, thinking, man, I am so grateful that I get to wake up today and look at this amazing sunset, look at all the things God has created. Mm-hmm. And it's so just randomly, I have these moments where I'm like, look, you have not been grateful for what you should have been. And then randomly something happens and it kicks me back into,
Yeah. Well, and maybe that's, I guess it's digging a little deeper into what we're touching on here, but maybe that's really it. It is, this life is precious, and there's, I would say holiness. There's holiness and a presence of God in every moment. And we can fall into this trap where we fail to recognize any of that. And I guess that's that is the in a weird way, the gift of these moments or these experiences that sort of wake us up. This has been a conversation that's been coming to me in various places recently. But it's in fact, in my tradition, we have bishops and priests and whatever. And so our bishop was at church on Sunday for his annual visitation, and he was talking about the real. He was talking about, I mean, for me, what it was a message about part of what, big thing of what Jesus was doing, right? Christianity to a large extent has gotten obsessed with afterlife, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I believe, therefore I've got the golden ticket to get to the place after this life. But He was saying, hey, Jesus was calling us to be real and conscious and alive and witnessing to the holiness in this moment. You're right here. And so I don't know, I guess I just see that connecting to what we're talking about. And yeah, I mean, a lot of really, when you dig into it, what I think, the story of God, and I could apply this to various religions, even outside of Christianity, but it seems to be this desire, if I can even say that. I feel like God has expressed a desire to be in relationship with humanity, and for us to be conscious and awake to that all the time. But we keep forgetting, and we keep,
Yes, things easily get in the way of that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. What else would you name in that journey, Janelle? How else did you experience God? Or what else would you name? I keep coming back to, like, and I assume you take it for granted because it's just who you are. But I keep coming back to, like, wow, like you had to have just an amazing foundation to face what you faced in the way that it sounds like you have. So that's just it really comes across strong.
Well, I think that, like I said, when you are making decisions that affect true life or death outcomes, at least for me, I had to rely on the thing that was bigger than me. And, I didn't want to do chemo. I thought that stuff is awful. It's nasty. There's long lasting side effects of chemo that could cause more problems. They can, in some cases, lead to different cancers. I really just researched everything. And so I didn't want to do it. But I had to rely on something bigger than me. I'm not an expert. I was trying to be, I was trying to do the research and make the decisions. And I thought, who am I to, question the things, like, even in this process of learning I have cancer, so many things were just laid out and just worked out for me. The things that I had prayed about and asked for were working out and being laid out in front of me. And then it got to the chemo, and I'm like, who am I to question all of these things that have been laid out for me? And the things that were, the chemo is meant to save my life, but it's also, like I said, filled with all these toxins that kill your body and kill your cells. And I just got settled. I just became settled with everything. And, every week when I would sit in and they would put the IV in and start running everything through my veins, I just, I would pray. As soon as everything started, I would pray. And I just felt such a peace. Such at peace with everything.
Man. w- outside of, I'm curious, I guess I'm obsessing about what your foundation had to be, but so your prayer life growing
Mhm.
up and leading up to this experience, outside of the journaling, did you have various sort of, what, I guess, was it all through church and through example of family, or did you have like your,
I would say prayer life, growing up, I don't recall it. Even in church, I recall a little bit of it. And I remember church as a young girl, and then my parents split up and we moved into this other small town. And I didn't have a home church. I would go, the bus would come through the neighborhood and pick up me and my friends, and we would go to church on Wednesday night, or, so I'd go with friends to just various different churches. I didn't have a home church for many years of my, you know, adolescence, teenage years. Um, but I think I just always remembered that foundation as a young child
mm,
that carried me through until I kind of found my own way.
yeah,
It wasn't necessarily church, but it just those few years as a very young child praying with, grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, the family gatherings, just those few examples is what carried through and set that foundation for me.
yeah, and that's great. And then when you said found your way, like, what do you?
I mean, I mean, just in the times, my peaks or my lows, just eventually I started to have that own awareness that I'm struggling. I need to, rely or talk to God about these things, or I have this great experience, this great thing that's happening, and I need to give thanks for that. I eventually just started to have that own awareness that I need to go back to the foundation and apply that. And it just got stronger and stronger as time went.
Yeah, and you mentioned like various, you mentioned like your parents split and a couple other. So like, would you say that challenges or, again, suffering in life prior to the cancer diagnosis, like, in some ways prepared you or strengthened that foundation? Like,
Well, sure. I think everything that we've experienced leads up to preparation for today and in any scenario.
mm,
So it absolutely, I think,
if
helped
we allow
prepare
it
me.
to, right? Yeah.
What'd you say?
If we allow it to shape us, right?
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, I believe that every experience um, prepares us for where we are today, for how we handle things today, and gives us the opportunity to expand or grow, to continue as we move forward.
Mm,
Learning from all of those experiences and drawing on it
mhm.
each time.
Yes, right. But I don't want to embarrass you here, but I just feel, again, like, I don't know that you see this, because I think as all of the things you're naming in your story, it sounds to me almost like you're naming them as if that's sort of the way everyone is, but it's not. And so it really, again, it comes across, your strength in the foundation comes across very clearly, and it's almost, well, it's beautiful, but I'm just sitting here going like, yeah, but that's not how everybody approaches things. And
Mhm.
so I'm fascinated with, like, why is Janelle that way? Like, what made you that way? Um, so just a compliment there, but I guess I'm just saying that, like, I deal with many people all the time, and I deal with many people and walk with many people in their suffering. And,
Mhm.
I can tell you from firsthand experience that's, for whatever reason, not everybody has the ability to
Right.
approach it in those ways. And so a lot of the work I do is really trying to help people approach it more in the way that you're talking about. But some folks, it's the narrative in their head is more, why is this being done to me, or why me, and so you get stuck there, and you're unable to submit, to have the positive outlook, to try to see, what good might be coming of this, or to find strength in any other aspect of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I tend to go through, when you're at different points in life, especially when you are facing struggles, sometimes getting through it means you just go through the motions, right? You just put one foot in front of the other and you keep going.
Yeah.
But what I am not good at when I get in that, just survival mode with any struggle, I'm not good at releasing the emotional piece of it. I keep it inside of me. And so the journaling helps me actually process the emotional piece of that and writing all of this down. And then that's where I get to, think through the feelings part of it and how it's affecting me and the people around me, God, and how what is what is the intent? What am I supposed to be learning? What am I supposed to do with all of this?
Mm-hmm.
So that I rely on the journaling to help me work through that.
Mm-hmm.
Or sometimes even just quiet time,
Mm-hmm.
setting, down and drinking a cup of coffee and just having quiet time with no noise, no electronics, nothing,
Mm-hmm.
and just thinking and praying and asking for help.
Mm-hmm. The something that made me think of is, well, and I don't know if this is true for you, but when you're talking about just going through the steps and just tackling what's in front of you, it reminded me, and I wonder if it's true for you, of like how oftentimes I don't see, especially in those sorts of situations. Yeah, you just got to do what's in front of you, and then it's not until retrospect, that I can sort of see what I call like the long arc of my story with God, and so it sometimes it takes me looking back and going, oh yeah, I see sort of, I don't know, I hesitate to say the reasons, or, the
Mm-hmm.
purpose behind any of that. But I at least see God's presence in the story and in my
Through
journey
that, and yeah.
when I look back, but definitely can be hard to see in the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that, I mean, do you identify with that? Like, was there, because it sounds like in how you've talked about things, it's like you seemed to have a pretty clear experience or awareness of God with you throughout it. But I would guess that there were valleys, right? Or times
Oh
of
yeah.
like, feeling alone, or feeling, like,
Yeah, and those valleys that you talk about, that's when it's the valley where I felt alone, or maybe was questioning, what is meant for all of this? Why is this? Why am I going through this? It wasn't necessarily that I felt alone, or that I felt like God had abandoned me, or it was because I was not relying on God for the answers. I was not relying on God for the strength to get me through it. And so that's what, when I look, it's when I get to the other side of a problem, that's when I'm able to look back, like you said, and kind of connect the arc.
mm-hmm,
Hindsight is always 2020. And as you were saying, you can see God through all of those moments. It's generally because I wasn't seeking him out for those answers, for that guidance.
mm-hmm,
And so over time, I have tried to be more aware of when I am not doing that.
Hmm.
and making it more of a presence and part of every day, every moment of my life, and seeing God in all the things that I have going on around me.
Hmm. Yeah, and sort of required in that in some ways is, or I guess part of like the mechanics that I see at play there is our humility, right?
Mhm.
Um, I think that's a big part of it, and maybe that's part of what goes on in this, again, this question of the problem of suffering. I mean, I think perhaps part of what is at play there is when we experience a form of suffering or challenge, and it brings us to that place where like we need outside help outside of ourselves. That I think part of the reason we experience God more clearly in those moments is because we're actually, we're otherwise we're just trucking along, right?
Yeah.
When we encounter a challenge like that, we reach out beyond ourselves, and that's humility,
Mhm.
so maybe that's part of what's at play there. Is just like we can continue to always live with humble hearts. Maybe we would
Yeah.
be much more clear about God's presence in our lives. Um, I'm curious what, part of what I like to ask in these episodes is, um, and everybody's sort of answer to this is different. So, but what do you have moments of experience that you can name, little stories, I guess, like of, what you would call sort of the most powerful or clear or important, quote unquote, spiritual experiences of your life? Or do you sort of couch it much more in like the story of your life, and your experience and your process?
I think that mine is probably just a broader whole life experience.
Okay.
I I really don't remember or recall any specific little moments. Um, I think it has to be just the whole broad
Yeah.
picture of life.
Yeah. I'd say that's probably enough. Yeah. Uh, yeah, because it's been intense. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Wonderful. Well, and I'm being mindful of your time this morning. I'm sure you've got a schedule and things to keep up with, but um, what does prayer life look like for you now, and what does that relationship with God look like for you now? Has it shifted or changed? I mean, it. Um, I know you still have a journey ahead in terms of
Mhm.
health and your diagnosis and battling this, right? I mean, what is it? 5 years? The goal is 5 years of.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So you still have like a journey ahead. So,
yes.
but at the same time, I guess it would be fair to say like things. You tell me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't feel like you're at like fever pitch in terms of the intensity of the experience. So I'm just wondering
Right.
how your spirituality, your relationship with God might look different on
Hmm.
this end of the journey as opposed to when you were in, you know, going to Texas and going.
Right. I would say it's different in that I have so much more even to be thankful for, and I'm walking in a different light than I was even a year ago. So I also don't want to get too I guess I want to stay grounded. Like I don't want to be too confident that like I'm on the other side of this. I want to stay grounded and real. And I think my focus has, as I was talking about earlier, with my kids and being the very best that I can be today to set them up. And, my son and my daughter, his wife, um, they're in a new marriage. And so I really have shifted my prayers to be more about keeping me grounded and aware and strong to continue doing all of the things that I need to do to stay healthy and to prepare my kids, and for God to be, always present in my kids' marriage, because I came from a divorced family. I've been, divorced myself. And so I pray for, their marriage to always have God front and center. And for my daughter, who, as I was saying, is a special needs girl, for her to always have and to build a network of people that can care and support and love on her at some point when I'm, not around. So I guess I've just shifted into, you know, ke- keeping me grounded and real and working toward the most important things and impacting people's lives
Hmm.
and preparing for next stages in life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you find that um, that becomes a challenge? The that staying grounded or I keep wanting to say present, like being present in the real, in the holiness of the moment. Does that become a challenge at all, as you sort of you know continue down the road of health and further yourself, distance yourself more from the intensity of that experience?
It does, because I get more comfortable with, being on, healthy and able to do more things. And so it is a little harder to stay grounded. And I've also had a renewed focus on my career and getting that back on track and growing that. Um, and that is another, maybe a discussion topic for something else, but I feel like um, this journey has made me want to share my spirituality and bring others to their own spirituality, and use my career and the people I connect with and have influence on to help them find that. But it's a corporate world, and so you have to be cautious of that too.
Yeah.
And that is not always okay to do it in that environment,
Yeah.
which again is probably another topic for another day. But I would like to
I'm
normalize
here if you got time. So that's it.
yeah, I just, it's we're not supposed to talk about those things in work. You're supposed to keep all that stuff separate from work, right? And that has become normal and okay, that to not have those conversations. But why is that? Why can't we make it normal to have those conversations?
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh, that gives me so many different thoughts and reactions. I mean, I don't know the corporate world. All I've ever done is ministry, in terms of after school. So I don't know if this is accurate. But the impression I have is when you say, why can't those things be talked about in the corporate world? Uh, I don't even think you mean, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but I think like the corporate world not only, especially doesn't allow us to talk about like religion or spirituality, but probably doesn't allow you to even talk, even enter into relationships that are vulnerable and authentic, right, and real. I mean, it's just the work, right? It's just the
Right, right. You got to be careful. You don't want to cross that line with
yeah,
someone. It's you've always got to be focused on the business and the professionalism, and not, you know,
yeah.
crossing a boundary.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, because I mean, I would tell you that I think the same struggle is present in the church. I mean, obviously we can talk about God and we can talk about
Right.
spirituality, but I still see. I think it's something within us naturally. I still see a resistance in people to be authentic and open and vulnerable and share about these experiences. In fact, I think that's how this show sort of started, was like,
Uh-huh.
there was a desire to, here I am in a church bubble. I'm deal with this all the time. I deal with pretty real things, and yet people still sort of hold this kind of stuff at bay.
Right.
And I wanted to get people's stories, right? And
Mhm.
so, I mean, this sort of comes from that. I don't know if I'm stretching too far here, but I see these things sort of connecting in a way. Um, it gets back to what we already were touching on of that. I don't know. I don't have the words for it this morning, but like, in my mind, I guess I already said this, but in my mind, Jesus, I feel like God, um, it can be found in every moment, but we have something. We're such strange creatures, and we have something that resists that. Um, and it's just sort of sometimes these experiences that jolt us back into that awareness. I don't want to at all. I keep using mission work as an example, and that just sounds so horrible, like comparing mission work to cancer diagnosis
No.
and battle. But I see similar themes in what I've experienced, where it's like people consistently come back from a mission experience, um, with two things. Usually they come back going like they're super thankful, for what they have, because they've gone without warm water and a decent bathroom, and they've just not been living in a comfortable way when we take them on
Mhm.
these experiences. And so, like, I know when I came back for the first time, I walked into a grocery store and just started bawling, because I couldn't. I was like, this is so different than what I just came from, and like
Yeah.
the gratitude was overwhelming. Or
Mhm.
like the hot water would come out, and I would be like, oh, "This is amazing," like, um, So you have that, people come back with that, and people also come back with this. They're shocked at how grateful, present, I would say spiritual. I know that's just like this word we put over
Right.
everything. The people that they encountered were, and they
Mhm.
always go, but these people had nothing, and
Right.
yet they were just, their presence affected our people.
Mhm.
And so I don't know. I guess I see similarities, in that when we go through struggles and challenges. Like, I guess I just see you saying the same thing, like, in a way,
Yeah. Yeah.
that then all of a sudden you're grateful for every moment.
Yes.
You everything is holy or sacred. Um,
Mm.
and again, I've used this example too much, but I see that, like, take Holy Communion, take the Eucharist. Like, I see that as an example of this. Like, Jesus was saying, "Hey, we're sharing this meal together. This is
Mm.
holy, right? But
Right.
you've got to be conscious of that, right? Otherwise,
Yeah.
we're just sailing through life. And sometimes it takes these things for us to wake back up to
Yeah.
true beauty and holiness, that's all around us all the time. Instead of dreaming of one day getting to that holiness, right?
Mhm.
When I
Mhm.
die, no, this is holy. Life is holy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I just, and I guess priests are weird, right? Because I walk, you see death a lot, and
Uh-huh.
I learned pretty quickly in ministry that, like, death was absolutely one of the most holy
Mhm.
experiences I've ever had, and always is. Um,
Yeah.
and that's a crazy thing to say.
Yeah. Yeah. I know, in my time at Houston, I saw and became friends with people that um, who are not here today. And they really saw the beauty in everything. And it definitely changes you and how you see the world, the relationships that you build, the messages you want to share. And it was it in spite of the experience itself and it being awful in many ways, it has really changed me and how it was a very humbling experience to see those people who are not here today and how they faced you know death with seeing the beauty
Mhm.
in everything.
Mhm. Mm. Bittersweet stuff, right? Very poignant. What I'm trying to be conscious of your time here. I don't know what your timeline is today, but are there other things you want to point out or name, experiences you had? Um, Anything else you want to share with us?
I don't think so. I don't think so. It's just, I think it goes back to it being for me, a whole life experience that started from, an early foundation. And I was able to discover that and what it meant for me on my own. Um, and I guess it goes back to the important role we play as parents and, grandparents, and how we show that to our kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm repeating myself a little bit, and definitely hey, if you ever want to, like, we'll do another episode and deep dive, the corporate world, and
Yeah.
how do we? I think there's a hunger out there. I encounter it everywhere in people. There's a
I
hunger
agree.
for real, right?
Yeah.
And no one knows, like, well, how do we do this? Where do we get that?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, if you ever want to come back and we can deep dive into some of that stuff, you just let me know. I'd love to do it.
Yeah.
But
Anytime.
but yeah, I just want to reiterate, like, I see in your story, yes, like this very clear arc and storyline. And I'm complimenting you and I'm repeating myself, but that foundation was special. And I know that this isn't the case for everyone. And I know it's cliche. So I say that knowingly, because people sort of say all the time, like, well, God won't give you anything that you can't handle and da da da. Well, that's not true. I mean, there's lots of people
Right.
that get given stuff and they can't handle it, and it's sad and it's
Right.
rough. But your story's a great example of, it's like, wow, I don't even know if Janelle really saw how solid of a foundation she had, and it just comes across so clearly that yeah, that all made you ready and capable to handle the immense challenge that you faced in
Yeah.
a really gracious and really beautiful way. So I just
Yeah.
want
Thank
to
you.
point that out again. Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks for sharing, and I guess practicing a little bit of what we're preaching here of vulnerability and authenticity, and just sharing about the realness of life, even the hard and ugly and difficult stuff. So I really appreciate you
Yeah.
doing that, especially with someone
Yeah.
you've never laid eyes on before or really talked to. So
Yes. Thanks for having me on.
yeah, yeah. Um, well, I'll talk to you in a second. I'm gonna hit pause, but just once again, thank you, and a joy and an honor. And for real, if you want to come back and we can deep dive on any of those topics, I would love.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well,
Absolutely.
hey, blessings on your continued journey, for your health, for your family. Yeah, and I look forward to seeing what's in store for you in the future.
Thanks so much.
All right, take care.